It's 2022, and you don't have to worry about the coronavirus anymore because you just received the newest vaccine for it. In fact, everyone has, and they're all returning to their pre-social distancing lives. What can possibly get better? The answer is a lot of things, because in the distant future, you won't ever have to worry about the coronavirus or any other illness ever again. In today's episode, I'll be talking about how mankind will eventually conquer Pestilence, an old enemy that has literally plagued our species for countless millennia and continues to harass us even today. Before I begin this video, I'd like to shout out another YouTuber, Virtual Dreamers. Virtual Dreamers is a channel that discusses the current state of virtual reality technology as well as the science behind full-dive virtual reality that is depicted in fiction. My favorite video is Careers for Supporting VR, where he talks about what careers can support starting full immersion virtual reality in the future. I highly recommend that you watch that video after finishing this one. Likewise, I would like to thank the channels Cold Fusion and Kurzgast for teaching me much of the science behind the video that I'll talk about today. So, I'd like to begin by talking about the current state of mankind's fight against pestilence. We currently live in a world where we fear deadly diseases such as cancer, Ebola, and the novel coronavirus. As everyone knows, many of these diseases are more or less a death sentence to whoever gets them. But compared to the past, we have it pretty good today. With vaccines, antibiotics, and other medical technologies, we are able to call diseases that also would have been a death sentence in the past only a moderate problem in the grand scheme of things. This is evident by the fact that our life expectancy has risen from below 40 years for most of human history to 73 years today. But what if I were to tell you that the concept of life expectancy may not even exist in the future world? That's right, you heard me correctly. I believe that in the future world, we'll live so long that people will only die of accidents or intentional murders. How will this be the case? The simple answer to that question will be nanotechnology. A staple of science fiction, nanobots are the key to eradicating pestilence in humanity. They can first and foremost be used to deliver drugs to specific areas within cells or tissues, and this can allow nanobots to treat inflammation or to clear out toxins. This is because nanobots are usually between 60 to 1000 nanometers long, or about 10 million times smaller than a marble. Since nanobots are about the same size as a human red blood cell, they can eradicate tumors by injecting a molecule called thrombin in the tumor, and this molecule only targets cancerous cells. This molecule makes it so that the rest of the body does not supply blood to the cancer cell, thus indirectly killing the cancer cell after hunting them down. And no, you don't have to worry about nanobots being in you 24/7 and controlling your entire body through its release of chemicals, because nanobots are too small to have batteries inside them, and are instead controlled by ultrasound. In layman's terms, this means that nanobots can only be used in specific areas that release the required ultrasound. In fact, since most nanobots are made out of organic materials anyway, the body will naturally dispose of them, producing a small allergy-like reaction for only a brief amount of time. Not only can mankind conquer cancer, we can also conquer viruses, which are a bit trickier because they are smaller than cancers and bacteria. Although nanobots themselves may be a bit too big to go around the body uninterrupted, they can release much smaller nanoparticles that can move around the body without disrupting the body's functions. These nanoparticles then can attack viruses and thus disable them. Of course, more study will need to be done on viruses' biological makeup to effectively create the right nanoparticles, but this is still a possibility in the future. With viruses and cancer out of the way, humans will be living hundreds of years. But that is not enough, for two reasons. The first is that it will cost a lot of money to continuously deploy nanobots and nanoparticles into the human body, and money will be a problem for humanity until the far future when it eventually eradicates scarcity, a topic that I'll talk about in a future video. The second is that we want people to live lives that are free from the weaknesses of old age. After all, since the human birth rate is declining and will soon come to a halt, we need to have biologically young people continue to run society. As such, the last part of humanity's war against pestilence will be its war on aging. Yes, you heard that right as well. We will end this video by talking about how humanity will not only live lives so long that life expectancy is no longer a thing, but we will also talk about how humans will live these long lives as young people. To eradicate aging, we first need to get rid of aged or senescent cells. These cells do nothing good for the body and only cause diseases once they become old and thus too damaged. Luckily, scientists have recently found a protein that can kill most aged cells when injected into mice, and this protein also leaves healthy cells largely unharmed. If this is extended into humans, it may be possible to kill aged cells and thus allow bald people to regrow hair and old people to regain their muscle mass and bone strength. But it gets even better from here. We can use babies or young people's stem cells or cells that are blueprints and tell the body to produce young cells to reverse aging. We can do so by injecting them into older people. This, in turn, can cause a new batch of young cells to be generated in the old people. In other words, this means that even already old people can be turned young again. This too was demonstrated in a study involving mice. Although mice are not people, the fact that these therapies work on mice suggests that there is some hope that they might work on humans as well. So, what does this all mean? It means that if you are a young person today, there's a reasonable chance that you may get to live until the end of the solar system's lifespan. Now, let's talk about what the future world will look like. In several decades, less money will be spent on treating diseases and more money will be spent on preventing diseases by preventing people from aging at all. The only time people will try to treat diseases is when they go to ultrasound chambers to have nanobots conduct nanosurgery or nanomedicine delivery onto them. By the late 21st century, it might be possible that everyone, even those who come from middle-income nations, to be youthful and no longer have the mentality of accepting death as a part of life. But this will not cause an overpopulation crisis. This is because fewer people are being born each year, and birth as a whole will eventually become a very rare occurrence, a topic that I'll cover in a future video. Because people will not be dying and very few people will be giving birth, the population will eventually stabilize at what I believe will be 12 billion people. And since these people will be living so long, most people alive in 100,000 AD will have been alive ever since 2050 AD or possibly even earlier. Finally, combined with increased automation, society will initially see an unemployment crisis. However, once full immersion virtual reality becomes a thing, something which I talked about in a past video, many people will no longer value employment as much as they did in the past and will intend to spend their very long lives in virtual worlds where they can be happier than they are in the physical world. This is because robots will be doing construction, vertical farming, and other physical world jobs for us. Well, there we have it, folks. This is how I believe that man's story of conquest over pestilence will play out. Man will conquer both disease and its main source, aging. If you enjoyed this video, please consider subscribing, sharing, and watching my past videos, why there may be a VR exodus, or asteroid mining, how to become a quadrillionaire in space. The code for this video is Genesis.